All right, so this is what Vish told me on the phone about an hour and a half ago. He said, Grant, there is no quarterback competition. And I understood exactly what he was talking about after he explained it. So why don't you explain this to our viewers, how this just doesn't exist?
Look, yeah, so I've seen this go back and forth on Twitter. I try to not be on Twitter too much, but at the same time, if you're doing content creation, being on Twitter, it's useful for you. It's not because you get to kind of get an idea of where people are leaning and what kind of things people are talking about so that you can direct into doing something that people prefer. So the conversation on Twitter constantly and the arguing is just going back and forth about whether it's Trey Lance, whether it's Jimmy, whether it's an open competition, all of that. And I don't understand that, Grant, because something I've maintained throughout this draft process is, to me, this is not about Jimmy Garoppolo versus Trey Lance. This is all about Trey Lance, right? And I think that the thing that makes it being all about Trey Lance is you have to go back to what they gave up to get him. 2 first-round picks and swapped a third to go up to get a guy with a top 5 pick, right? In Jacksonville, who's the guy from day one? It's Trevor Lawrence. With the Jets, who's the guy from day one? It's Zach Wilson, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The Niners, the luxury they have is they don't have to force their guy to be the guy from day one. But it's still all about that guy. So to me, this isn't a competition. This is about Trey Lance's readiness. If Trey Lance is ready, Trey Lance starts. If Trey Lance is not ready, the luxury they have is they don't have to force him to play the way the Jets have to force Zach Wilson to play, whether they know he's ready or not, or the Jaguars have to force Trevor Lawrence to play, whether he's ready or not, because they have a starting caliber quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. But the days that this is Jimmy Garoppolo's job to lose and all of that, I understand they're saying that, and it's the right rhetoric to say, because you could be in August and you could feel that Trey Lance isn't as far along as you want, and you look at this roster and you say, we need to go win, and we have a quarterback we can win with in Garoppolo. So it's the right rhetoric to say that it's his job to lose now. But if Lance is ready in August, Lance is going to start. If Lance is ready week 5, Lance is going to start week 5. If Lance is ready week 10, Lance is going to start week 10. This is no longer about Jimmy Garoppolo. This became all about Trey Lance when they forfeited their future and they mortgaged it all to go get this particular quarterback. So it's no longer about whether, hey, he beats Jimmy in the competition or anything. It's all about this guy. He's the present. He's the future. And that's where I think the conversation has gone a little bit astray, because people are talking about this as if it's a directly 1 versus 1. This isn't about Jimmy being better than Trey Lance, because Jimmy could still be better than Trey Lance at certain things. But if Kyle and the team deem Trey Lance ready, and now I don't know what that ready is. You don't know what that ready is. Kyle said he can't even describe that ready. It's a ready that everybody will know. Yep. And so if that ready is something everybody will know, if they know it at that point, he's going to play. Like, for example, this would be like if the Chiefs, right, the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes thing, right, everybody wants to compare it to this situation. But Grant, what did the Chiefs do? Alex Smith was an MVP candidate in 2017. What did they do the next year? They traded him. Yeah. Why did they trade him? He's not the guy.
Right.
The guy is Patrick Mahomes. It didn't matter how well Alex Smith played. He had his career best year. It didn't matter. The guy is Patrick Mahomes. Just like that, it doesn't matter how well Jimmy Garoppolo plays. It doesn't matter at all anymore. This isn't about Jimmy Garoppolo. This is about Trey Lance. If Trey Lance is ready week 1, Trey Lance plays week 1. If Trey Lance isn't ready till next year, then Jimmy Garoppolo is going to start the entire year. But this isn't Jimmy versus Lance. This is just Lance.
It's Lance versus Lance. So if Lance isn't playing by year 3, it's because Lance was the wrong pick, not because Jimmy Garoppolo just kept him on the sideline and it just fought for his job. No, there should be nothing Jimmy Garoppolo can do, given that Trey Lance is what we think he is, that what he was billed to be.
Look, there should be nothing he can do. You know why, Grant? Because if there was something he can do, then the 49ers would have been confident that maybe there's something he can do, and they wouldn't have traded up to pick 3 a month before the draft. When they traded up to pick 3 a month before the draft, that's a drastic move. And you talked about it when we were talking about it on the phone, right? Like, I love how people pick and choose what they want to hear from Kyle's press conferences. When Kyle spends an entire press conference telling you that we felt we needed to get a starting quarterback, and we wanted to get a starting quarterback, we don't listen to that, right? Like, what does that mean by a starting quarterback? But when he says one time in passing to answer a question that it'll be tough to beat Jimmy Garoppolo out, we listen to that and we harp on it. See, Kyle said it. But we pick and choose, right, what we want to use to fit our narrative. But the bottom line is what Kyle said in both those situations is true, right? Garoppolo is a solid starting quarterback, so it would be tough for a rookie to beat him out. But at the same time,
which is why they moved up from 12 to 3. They could have stayed at 12 and taken Mac Jones, who would have a chance to beat out Jimmy Garoppolo or not. The whole idea was to move up to 3 and get what he called a starting quarterback.
Right? And what did Adam Schefter say? The 49ers believed that Trey Lance was more ready to start day one than Mac Jones, right? If you remember right after they drafted him, that was one of the things Adam Schefter said. Now, I guess we can't believe Schefter, right? Because Schefter said Mac Jones, so Schefter is always wrong. So even though that fits what I'm going to say, I can't say that. Sorry, Schefter, I'm messing. Yeah. But what I was going to say was he said that. So to me, like this conversation, it being like, oh, if Jimmy plays great in camp, Trey Lance, he's going to have to sit 2 years. Jimmy isn't Brett Favre. Jimmy can't sideline a quarterback. Jimmy isn't Aaron Rodgers. He can't sideline Jordan Love. Yeah. Tony Romo I'm going to get killed for saying it, but he's one of those guys that if you look at his stats, you look at everything, you could make an argument that he's right with the other guys in his era that will go to the Hall of Fame, the Big Bens, all those guys, right? Yes. Him, Carson Palmer, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford are the guys that were really good, just never the elite guys, you know?
Yes.
They were in the 5 to 13 range. He couldn't even sideline Dak. They didn't even give him that with Dak Prescott.
Right.
Once Dak Prescott started playing well, it became about Dak Prescott. So to me, it doesn't matter, right? Like you can say, like, we don't know, right? Like that's the other thing, right? We don't know what that readiness is. We don't know how Trey Lance has been looking. We don't know how he's been consuming the offense.
He hasn't played in pads yet. So
all we have is to go off of his film from 2 years ago in NDSU and one game last year where he was mostly bad, right? The game this year, that showcase game, he was pretty terrible. It was probably the worst game of his college career.
Yeah.
But so since we don't know those things, we can't make any assumptions on whether he's ready to start or not. How do we know? Like the same argument we make for him to be ready to start, the people making the argument saying he's not ready to start, how the hell do you know he's not ready to start?
Right. So but what I'm saying is if he shows it in camp and he shows it in preseason, the Niners aren't going to be like, well, this is still Jimmy's team for one more year. I feel like there's a narrative going around that like, yeah, Trey Lance is here, but this is still Jimmy's team for one more year.
Yeah, that's the point right there, Grant.
Yeah.
It's like it's not about if he shows he's ready, he's gonna play. But if he shows he's not ready, the luxury is that they have Jimmy, who they can win with. They have a really good roster, so they don't have the need to play him. Like the Jaguars have to play Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence has to play well for them to be a good football team. Same thing with the Jets and Zach Wilson. Hell, even the Bears, they have Andy Dalton, who is probably like a tier below Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of quarterback. If Jimmy Garoppolo is just that middling type starter kind of guy that you can start for 16 games, Dalton is kind of the fringe starter backup type. With their coaching, their roster, they can afford to have Andy Dalton start all 16 games and have real aspirations as a football team. At some point, Justin Fields is going to have to take over. That's the luxury the Niners have, right? That's the luxury they have with Garoppolo. But at the same time, because Garoppolo is a luxury, they're not going to rely totally on him and say, oh, hey, Trey, I know you're looking good. I know we feel really good about your progress, but this is Jimmy Garoppolo. We can't sit Jimmy Garoppolo. Heck no. If he's ready, he's playing.
Right. I mean, if they're worried about disrespecting Jimmy Garoppolo, that went out the window when they traded up for Trey Lance. It's no longer Jimmy Garoppolo's team, and I feel like you see that from both of their actions. Trey Lance is the one organizing everything this offseason. Jimmy Garoppolo is doing, I don't know. So it seems like it's in the Niners' interest for Trey Lance to show enough in preseason and camp to the point where the Niners can get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo as soon as possible. I mean, that's the best case scenario.
Right. They and the way the situation is laid out, actually, it's beautifully done. This is masterful in terms of being able to play the PR game, right?
Yeah.
Because they can say things to fit a certain narrative. If Lance isn't ready, the narrative that Lance isn't ready is never going to come out. Because they can just say, we have Jimmy Garoppolo, and Lance can't start this year because we have Jimmy Garoppolo, right?
That was the plan. So that was the plan.
They can drive the messaging that way. And if Lance is ready, hey, the guy we picked, he's already ready. Look at him.
Yeah.
This is the guy we picked, right? He's ahead of schedule, all of that. He beat out, and they can say he beat out Jimmy Garoppolo, who we thought there was no way he could beat him out. And so the way they can structure this in terms of the PR, it's a really easy sell for the 49ers. But if anybody thinks that this job is about a competition or about Jimmy Garoppolo, they're just lying to themselves. Because if this job was about Jimmy Garoppolo, we would not be trading up, or the San Francisco 49ers, excuse me, not we, I'm not a we, but we would not be sitting here watching the San Francisco 49ers trade up 3 or 2 first-round picks and swap a third one to go get a quarterback because they have a guy who's already their guy.
Well, so what Vish and I are saying is in the NFL, there's always the truth and the PR spin. And you can't blame these teams for doing the PR spin. They're multi-billion-dollar organizations that want to get their narrative out there that suits them because everything that they do needs to be what's best for their organization. But if you're a vet following the team, you always know you can try to guess what the truth, what the subtext is. And that's what Vish is very good at. That's what I have some experience doing, and that's what we're talking about right now. Don't take the Niners at face value on this one because it suits them to have certain narratives, and they're entitled to those narratives. You just, as a diehard fan watching this show on June 28th, when you could be doing literally anything, you should know what really is going on. Yeah,
the bottom line is, right, I don't think they're lying to us per se.
No.
They're just not telling us the entire truth. And
right.
I think this is a situation, to me, frankly, I think it's a very easy one to read. I think that most people that follow the 49ers, if the Arizona Cardinals had this same exact situation, they would read it easily. I'm pretty sure most people would have said, I'm sure Sam Bradford was pegged to start 16 games, if I remember correctly, for Steve Wilkes, Mike McCoy, that regime, and Josh Rosen was starting by week 4. I think most of us as Niners fans figured, this is Rosen. Rosen's going to be the guy, even though Sam Bradford they paid him a lot of money to come be their bridge quarterback that season.
That's true.
So I think that this situation is actually a very easy one to read. When you trade that much up, that's your guy. That guy's the present. That guy's the future. That guy's everything. Your franchise is all about Trey Lance. The franchise was about Jimmy Garoppolo when they paid him, but it's no longer at that point because they sought avenues to replace him, and now they got a guy who they think should replace him at some point, if not immediately.
Yeah, and Patrick Mahomes sat on the bench for a season. He was not the number 3 pick in the draft.
No.
He was not 3 first-round picks. Every game that Trey Lance doesn't play is too bad from the 49ers perspective.
So I think there's another difference in that situation too, right? Like the Mahomes situation also, like I've talked about how I thought Mahomes could have probably started as a rookie. I mean, he had one of the greatest regular seasons for a quarterback ever in his second year. So I think he might have been able to be competent.
But he was going from air raid to pro style. Right. And there were things like this guy's going from pro style to pro style.
Right.
Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Conceptually, in terms of their offenses, in terms of what they ask him to do, it's not too far apart because they're not an offense that's going to ask him to drop back and stuff, which is the stuff we have not really seen him do.
Right.
But what I wanted to touch on is the Alex Smith versus Garoppolo. The Chiefs, to me, were in a situation where they felt much more comfortable with Alex Smith as their quarterback. They kind of realized that there is a realized ceiling with Alex Smith. They might not win a Super Bowl, but they had a 4-year run of being a playoff team, winning that AFC West, being very comfortable with Alex Smith. With Garoppolo, to me, there's a little more tension here because he's gotten hurt. 2 of the 3 years he was supposed to be their starter for 16 games. So there's a little bit more of an urgency for the 49ers to try and get a guy that they can rely upon. For the Chiefs, they knew Alex Smith was Mr. Reliable. They just knew that Mr. Reliable could only get them so far. But they were comfortable with more comfortable, I would say, with Mr. Reliable than they were with the Niners seem to be with Garoppolo because they whatever like we watch a decent amount of film and we can break down the X's and O's as to why Garoppolo struggles at these certain things. A lot of people have done it, and you can choose to hear it or you can choose to ignore it. But the bottom line is he has this glaring thing that nobody can't ignore, and that's the fact that he gets injured a lot and he's missed a lot of games.
Right.
And when he's not reliable as a starting quarterback, when the most important thing for you is to be available as a starting quarterback, that's where this starts to become even more of a different issue than what the Chiefs had with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes.
Final question on this topic, and then we'll move on. If Trey Lance shows he's ready, whatever that means. Kyle Shanahan said, well, he says you'll sort of know it when you see it. Like it'll be kind of apparent. If he shows he's ready, what is your prediction as far as Jimmy Garoppolo's future go? Trade him during the preseason, cut him during the preseason. What do you think?
So last time we did this, I brought up the Sam Bradford situation in Philly, and I said that I think that that's what they should do. But, to be honest, this is a really hard thing to predict. I'm not sure that the Niners will do that. I think they might try and hold on to Jimmy. And heck, I think they might even hold on to him for $25 million. Niners have shown the one thing you can say about Jed York, you can say a lot of things about him. He's not afraid
on players.
To check. He cuts the check.
Players.
And he's willing to do it. He's willing to pay on players who don't even really play for him. Look at how much money they spent to get D Ford.
Yep.
So he's willing to cut the check. And I think that given how much he believes in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and given how much pressure is a little bit, Kyle Shanahan, you can see that he's a guy who's really sick of losing. He wants to have a winning season this year. And given what he's gone through, and those situations were self-inflicted because he kept talking about how his quarterback room was the strongest position on his team in 2019, and he talked about it in 2020, and his backups were Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. I think that unless Jimmy really forces his way out, I think that the Niners will just keep him, because keeping him as their backup quarterback, at least, we can protect ourselves. And I think with Jimmy also, Jimmy's not the kind of guy where there's going to be an immediate pressure where if Lance plays bad, people are just going to be clamoring for Jimmy. I don't view the Niners fan base as that type, and I don't view Jimmy is the kind of guy that people will clamor for like that. So it won't be much of a problem. And if Lance goes down, you have a guy who you can win with, and that your team believes in and everything. And I think that's what they would end up doing. As of right now, we have 2 practices and like 3 pressers to go off what I'm predicting this, but that's what I think would happen.
Okay. Jeremy Price says, never got to ask you, Grant, but what NFL team do you root for, honestly? All 49ers. All 49ers SI. It's a really good team, about 12 riders. You should definitely check us out. Other than that, I don't root for a team. I root for Bishop O'Dowd High School, but I don't really know what they've done recently. And Dwelly. Yeah, team
and
Dwelly. UCLA, although I'm definitely rooting for Chip Kelly to get fired. So I have to say I'll take some losses along the way. Sam Bone Slice says, I'm all for Lance, but they are only promoting the positive. I doubt he magically fixed his mechanics. Shout out to you, Grant. Hey, man, I still feel like even if he misses a few throws high every game, he's still going to be better than Jimmy.
So here's my thing, right? Like, obviously, they're going to promote the high, right? That's why you don't go gaga and retweet the practice video of him making one throw to Mo Sanu and just like break that down and say, oh, look, his mechanics look better and all of that, because everything they're going to put out is going to make him look better. But also, the Niners aren't going to start him if they feel that his mechanical issues are still existent to the point that it's going to hamper their team, which goes back to the ready thing, right? All of this is basically contingent on Trey Lance's readiness. It doesn't matter, right? Like, if the reason the Niners are in kind of a unique and nice situation is that they don't have to force him if those mechanics aren't where they want them to be, or whatever issues they've identified, because they haven't been transparent with us on what are the things they want Trey Lance to work on, aside from a vague term like mechanical flaws. Like, what is it with his feet? What is it with his arm? What specifically do you want him to be doing? So because of that, I don't think they'll look at him as ready if those things aren't fixed to the point where they don't think he can play. Like, I think that goes all into this question of readiness. And the guy that's making the decision on readiness is not me and Grant. It's Kyle Shanahan. But what Grant and I are saying is that Kyle Shanahan isn't going to make the readiness based on how well Jimmy Garoppolo is playing. It's all going to be based on Trey Lance and only Trey Lance.